Okay, Baruch Hashem. We are back with another 5 minutes of Bitachon. What we're going to do today is really a little bit of a review. We learned the 18th chapter in the previous year, which taught us the way that Bitachon works, which taught us that it's not the pshat that we do something and we get a result, but rather Hashem decides what the result should be and allows us to be privy to the means to do that result, to get that intended result. Now, says Rav David Sata, today we're going to focus on some stories, on some proofs to this incredible idea. And he begins by teaching us that Sarah Imeinu, we all know the parsha begins that she lived for 127 years and all the different pshatim, that they were years, 100, like 27, like 20, like 100. And Rav David Sutton over here brings down from Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky that one might think that how was Sarah Imenu Niftares? Because she heard about the Akedah. So one might think that her life was cut short. Obviously not. Hashem knew it was time for Sarah to be Nifter and thereby created the cause, created the situation for her to be Nifter. How we have to remind ourselves that the natural means do not determine the outcome, but rather once there is that outcome, Hashem determines how it's going to work out. And another incredible story, Rav Michal Feinstein, who's the son-in-law of the Brisker Rav, had a daughter who suffered from a horrible asthma condition. And one time she had a terrible asthma attack, and the family was looking for the nebulizer, for the item to treat her. And Rahman al-Islan, they couldn't find it, and this girl was Niftares. And the family was plagued by guilt. If only we would have known where he saved it. If only we would have been able to find it. And a prominent Rav, maybe it was Rav Michal Feinstein himself, explained to them that Ishtadlos only works in one direction. How we have to be so careful to realize that going forwards, of course, we have to have Ishtadlos. We have to know where we put the machine, and we have to be safe, and we have to do everything appropriately. But once something happens, there's no Ishtadlos backwards. We don't look back and say, oh, if I would have, guilty. Hashem decided how it's going to happen. And therefore, that's what happened, irregardless of the way that you determined. And a similar story, he doesn't bring to us here, but I heard an incredible story with Rav Shimon Galai. Someone was sitting in the room when the parents came, and the parent had a child that Rahman al-Islan was killed in a tragic accident, hit while the child was riding a bicycle. And the person was talking to Rav Shimon Galai, and the person said, you know what we did after the accident? You know what my wife told me? And everyone was wondering, what's this man going to say? And the man turns to Rav Shimon Galai and he said, my wife said, let's buy every child a new bike. And everyone thought they heard wrong. And everyone thought that what he meant to say was, let's get rid of all the bikes. A kid killed by a tragic bike accident. And of course, Rav Shimon Galai smiled and said, that's the right way to have bitachon. It was the bike that killed the child. That was the vehicle. That was the way that Hashem determined it was supposed to happen. That doesn't mean you're not supposed to ride a bicycle. How critically important it is to realize that Hishtadlus does not work backwards. And one last story. The Brisker Rav says that what happens? You have a hole in your pocket. You take $100. You put it in your pocket. You lose your money. And the person afterwards says, oh, if only I would have realized there was a hole and sewn it up. Says the Brisker Rav, you're denying Hashgacha. Hashem determined you had a hole and to lose the money. Again, Hishtadlus never works backwards. And finally, to end on a happy note, there was a couple that after 10 years of not having children, a tzaddik came to town and they got an appointment and they got a bracha. And Baruch Hashem, they had a child. And a short while later, the family was so happy, but they bemoaned the fact, if only we would have met that tzaddik earlier. Can you imagine? We waited 10 years. And said one of the tzaddikim, you got it all wrong. Because it was the time for you to get your Yeshua. That was precisely when the tzaddik showed up. How important we have to realize the shtadlus goes one direction. Yes, plan. Yes, work hard. Yes, do everything in our means. But then when it happens, it's not the ishtadlus that made it happen. Hashem determined it was going to happen. The ishtadlus was just the vehicle to get there.